No, we were identified on the basis of either being primary school or whatever KLA we were for secondary. I could find myself being sent out to Broken Hill, so I don't necessarily do my region. There were a certain amount of people trained up, so there's not huge numbers of external observers, but obviously as numbers grow, they will have to train more observers. But we weren't identified regionally. People applied and they trained up on the basis of having, for secondary, a couple of people from every KLA, and for primary there was quite a few people trained up.
Samantha, just a point on that only DEC people are looking at DEC colleagues, so it is an external observer.
Yeah, that's right. So we don't go and observe Catholic or independent schools, and they don't come and observe us. So we only observe DEC schools.
Can I ask about timing? A lot of our things that we might want you to see happen before school, breakfast meetings, and after school going quite late. Is the observer able to stay before and after, if that's planned?
Yes, when we were trained up, we were told that there could be things like that happen and extensions of time. And so with me having to go down the far south coast, if that had been the case, they would have paid for my accommodation to stay overnight. So I would have been there early in the morning and stayed late at night, later in the afternoon. Because some of you might want to have network meetings observed or professional learning at the school. So they understand that there are different things that you will do and want to have observed. Just something of interest when Debbie was speaking about the maintenance of accreditation. I was on the committee that wrote that maintenance of accreditation policy. That 20 hours of learning that's in the teacher identified learning that relates to sort of giving back to the profession, there was much discussion around that, and it's things like mentoring, coaching, running networks. Those sorts of things would be the 20 hours that is involved in the 80 hours of teacher identified learning. So it's a real opportunity for you to show that you are giving back to the profession. You're building the capabilities of the teachers within your KLA or primary school group or your school group. So it was an interesting thing that we fought and argued for, and it was put into the policy. So that's one of those nice things that's part of the role of maintenance. Any other questions?
Yeah, I know you don't work in the Institute, but do you have any idea, just scare me a bit when Debbie was talking about how you can get through all this process and then it sits at region and does its thing, which is fine, but then the fact that the Institute is still in the process of forming that moderation committee to actually get these things approved and done? Do you have any idea where that's up to?
I'd like to, because I'm waiting to hear if I'm on that committee, so I need to know that myself. I was hoping to have had that information by today, but unfortunately I'm doing 2 jobs at the moment and I'm running around and I didn't get to my office to make that phone call. But I would hope that it should be formed very soon. But if any of you remember what it was like for accreditation at competence, it was almost like playing catch up. And so I imagine it will be formed as a just in time, and it will all happen for you, but it's probably not going to be formed in the timeline that we would have loved it to have been formed by. But I assume that everybody who will be on the moderating committee will have had some training with the Institute in some way. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you know where national standards fits into all of this?
In terms of the national standards, well, we know that they're already written, and I've had discussions with the Institute and they've talked about 2013. In terms of what that will look like, we're not quite sure that yet. I mean, it was interesting hearing Stephen this morning talk about it, and obviously there are moves afoot for that to become bigger rather quickly, but I think each of you sitting here will be in good stead once you're accredited at those levels. What it looks like, I'm not sure, but I think you will certainly not be disadvantaged by doing the national standard, by doing the New South Wales standard, because I believe most of the people on the committee, like our actual CEO from the Institute, was the convener of the panel for the national standards, and they have been all over the national standards, and so they reflect very well against our standards.